Hey, what's up guys? It's Austin, and we're back with our 1,000 subscriber special. And we've got something special in store for you guys. I just wanted to drop a few bars from the famous Drake song, Started at the Bottom, Now We Here, at 1,000 subs. So we're gonna give you guys this. So what you guys need to do to get this is put I want that in the comments. Make sure you guys are a subscriber and like the video. So we're gonna talk about this for a little bit, and then we're gonna give it away. So this is a Gameboy Zero that we partnered with Retro Mod Gaming to do for this giveaway. And he did some really cool stuff for us. As you can see, he put our logo on here. Really did a good job with the case as a whole. And as you can see, he really DP'd this up for us. So we're going to boot in. This is, of course, being a Gameboy Zero. It runs off a Raspberry Pi Zero. And it uses Emulation Station like some of the other stuff we've talked about on the channel before. As you can see, there's quite a few systems on here. One thing that I want to note about this, and this is pretty much across the board with anything that you're running off of a Raspberry Pi Zero, that's a very low power chipset that doesn't have a whole lot of power, graphically or input power for that matter. So just keep that in mind when you're wanting to run stuff on here. Super Nintendo, Atari, Game Gear, Game Boy, all work flawlessly. Once you get past that into even Game Boy Advance, it runs. It just doesn't run at full speed most of the time. There's some games that work just like they should, but there's also some games that don't work that well. But other than that, Game Boy Color, Sega Master System, pretty much anything below or up to 16-bit works great. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut to some gameplay. I'm going to show you guys some Super Nintendo games, some Atari games, definitely some Game Gear, some Game Boy games because I'm very fond of those. We might even touch on some Game Boy Advance. Like I said, there's a little bit of issue with those, not too much. And just kind of give you guys a rundown on what this thing does good and what it doesn't do. Alright, so now we're going to do some gameplay to see how some of these systems run on this Pi Zero that's inside of our Game Boy Zero. So I'm going to start with Atari 7800. There's a pretty cool game I found in here when I was looking for games to play. It's called Alien Brigade. I'd never heard of it before. I started looking for games for this video. It's a pretty neat like side-scrolling shooter. So basically the point of it is you're scrolling side to side shooting soldiers and tanks and stuff and aliens because it's Alien Brigade. Alright, so you've got some bombs and a machine gun. So here in a second there's going to be enemies pop up. It's pretty good. And as you'd expect, Atari 7800 runs flawlessly. So, Alien Brigade, pretty good game. Definitely good to play on this system. So, now we're going to move on down the line. We're going to go to Game Gear, which is, I guess you could call it the equivalent of a Game Boy for Sega. Let's scroll down and see what looks good in here. And let's try Fatal Fury Special, which should be like a beat-em-up game. And the cool thing about running Game Gear games on this is a big flaw of the Game Gear was the screen was really bad and it would burn in and get like scan lines on it. So you don't have to worry about that with this because this has got a modern screen in it. So let's see how this runs. So I was wrong, this is not a beat 'em up, it's just a fighter. But, as you'd expect, it runs great. On to the next system. Let's see what else we got in here. Alright, so we did Game Gear, so let's try Game Boy. We will play Battletoads. And I'm sure Game Boy's going to run fine, but just for the sake of doing it, we're going to play a Game Boy game. You gotta love that green Game Boy. Alright, so as expected, this plays fine. So let's move on to the next game system, which we're going to do Game Boy Advance. So disclaimer before we start this, the Pi Zero in this application does not do very well with Game Boy Advance. It's been really hit or miss for us, what runs well, what doesn't run. Most of the time everything will run, but it can be kind of slow. We'll try a random game. Let's see what we got. 3-game pack Candyland Shoots. So this is, as you can hear in the audio, it kind of plays slow, even with something as, you know, bottom of the barrel as Candyland. So that's one of the biggest issues I see is the audio slowdown and also game slowdown. It plays for the most part, but it's just not at the correct frame rate. And it's like that across the Game Boy Advance from what we've seen. There may be some really low-end, not demanding titles, like maybe a pinball game or something like that would run okay. But for the most part, Game Boy Advance does not run well on this. Alright, so Game Boy Color, I'm sure will run fine. We'll play a quick game of 1942, see how it goes. Alright. So this is a pretty fun game to play on MAME, or if you've got like a stick system like this, it's a good game to play, but I'm sure it's good on Game Boy too. I've never played it on this platform. But yep, runs really good. So far the only thing that I've really had an issue with is Game Boy Advance. So we'll move on. We'll do Super Nintendo, do a 16-bit system, and then we might try a PC Engine game just to see how it goes. So actually this is NES, so let's go ahead and jump to Super Nintendo, because if it'll play Game Boy Color, it'll definitely play NES, because a lot of those games are one and the same. Let's try... Alright, so for Super Nintendo, we're going to try out Castlevania. And so, from my experience so far with Super Nintendo, all of it runs really well. Which is weird to me, because Super Nintendo and Game Boy Advance should be, you know, pretty similarly spec'd. But Super Nintendo runs good. It may be that if we ran a different emulator for Game Boy Advance, it would do better. I haven't tried that yet. So if you guys have any suggestions for that, put it down in the comments. So let's try Castlevania Dracula X. Yep, it looks like it runs good. Yep. So no major hang-ups or anything. Pretty good running game. So let's just try one more system. We'll try the PC Engine, see if there's anything neat in there. Clax. Never heard of it. Sounds pretty cool. We'll give it a shot, see how it goes. How to play. Get 3 in a row. So, old school Candy Crush. See, it's like you're waiting on them to come off the conveyor belt. You grab one and then you drop it. So it's a pretty neat little puzzle game. I could definitely see killing some time with this on a road trip or something. I just want to get 3 in a row and see what happens. Oops. Looks like we're going to get red. Oh, shit. Well, way to mess that one up. So it just clears it like Tetris. But yeah, that's a pretty neat game. So PC Engine runs good. So I guess we'll do a wrap up real quick. All in all, this thing is really neat. Big shout out to Retro Mod Gaming for hooking us up with one of these, customizing it up, and really making it digital power trip friendly. So definitely pick one of these up. If you've got some spare money laying around, this would be a really good time killer on a plane, train, whatever you're doing that requires you to numb your brain for a little bit. But it's got a ton of stuff it will play. I guess only downfall is Game Boy Advance. But like I said, maybe you try a different emulator, it would work better. Your miles may vary, but let us know in the comments if you pick up one of these things, try something different. But we're going to give this thing away, so make sure that you like, subscribe, and drop a comment that says, I want that, in the comments below. And we're going to give this thing away 1 week from the day this video launches. So we really appreciate all you guys have done to get us to where we're at now, 1,000 subscribers. Sorry we kind of took a break for a little bit. We're going to try to be back at you guys with content. And keep coming back. We'll be here. See you later.